Let me also inform you that the session will be spearheaded by Rajesh Dhuddu, who is the partner PwC. So Rajesh will be responsible in extracting all the relevant insights. Rajesh, let me please invite you on stage. And joining Rajesh, may I please firstly invite Bhavit, Sheth, co-founder and chief operating officer, Dream Sports. If I could please invite Bhavit as well. Yes. We also have with us Saurabh Chopra, founder and chief executive officer, SportsBaazi. Sudhir, Kamath, chief operating officer, Nazara Technologies. And Chirag, Sanghani, head of media and gaming GCP India, Google. You know, we're talking about India's trillion-dollar digital future. Can we have an ambitious round of applause as well? Let's seed that ambition in our applause. Let's bring that energy again back in the air. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us. And with that, Rajesh, over to you.
Thank you, Kavya. Good afternoon. You know, I must confess, when we were planning for this session last week, we were discussing when the session is going to be held, and we saw that it's post-lunch. And you know, all post-lunch sessions are very difficult, but I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm sure my fellow panelists are also pleasantly surprised to see the room being fully occupied. This is what gaming does to people, right? So gaming bikta hai. India mein gaming bikta hai. And this morning, we had the privilege of launching this particular report. This is something that I had taken up immediately after I joined PwC about 6 months ago. And the entire journey has been very, very engaging, and so much of energy and efforts we have put into this report. But I must also say that I picked up a very contagious habit, because we were looking at the report and how people are playing games. And if you happen to be seated next to me, I will peep into your phone. I'll peep into your phone not to see what you're surfing, but I'll peep into your phone to see what you're playing. So that's a contagious habit that I picked up thanks to the industry, thanks to the convention. Of course, I should give up that contagious habit over a period of time. So if you see me peeping into your phone, it's only for that purpose. With that as a background, as a prelude, I have an absolute honor and the privilege to introduce the luminaries from the industry: Bhavit from Dream11, Saurabh from SportsBaazi, Sudhir from Nazara, and Chirag from Google. So what we're going to do is we're going to decode and unravel in terms of how this gaming industry is going to develop in India. We'll start off with you, Bhavit, in terms of, you know, we've seen in the morning we launched the report, a lot of interesting things from a report perspective. Yeah, there are some interventions that are required from an Indian gaming industry perspective. So according to you, what interventions, or rather, what are the opportunities that are there? And in terms of what are the drivers of those opportunities, whether it is from a technology perspective or any other perspective, and what interventions would be needed to realize the lofty goal of a trillion-dollar industry?
Sure. So first of all, Rajesh, when you said contagious habit, I was hoping you said that you started playing more games. Although you look at other people playing games, but we'll fix that for you. But yeah, as gaming, and we've heard a bunch of panelists saying that today also, Harsh said it, Sandhya, and then your report also called it out, is how gaming is leading and is at the forefront of technology innovation also. And, when you delve into it, I don't think the gaming industry has a choice, right? Every other industry, their platforms get differentiated by how fast you deliver, or, how efficient you are, how the execution is. There's a lot of logistics involved. What is the availability? With gaming, your entire offering is differentiated by what is your platform, how is your platform better than other platforms, what are innovative things that you are doing on your platform that other people don't do. And, gaming as an industry doesn't have logistics, it doesn't have inventory, none of that. Right. So for us, it's all about technology and building a good technology platform that can, travel the length and breadth of this country and outside the country as well. So that's where, the industry has been focused on. We've seen a lot of innovation coming out of this industry, whether it be, on the AI side, that's, one of the first industries to actually pick up AI has been the gaming industry. Whether it be on cyber security to build a trusted and safe platform for our users, whether it be, in payments or fintech, because we want to make sure that our users are able to make payments seamlessly. So there are a bunch of these innovations, and we work very closely with a lot of third parties where we are dependent on to make sure, like for example, Chirag is here and we work very closely on cloud computing. So because gaming has a different requirement on cloud computing versus other genres of platforms. And so those are kind of things that we've been working closely with partners. Partners have been very happy to work with us because they also get that opportunity to show how they can add value to us. So those technology levers that we have and we have been trying to pull over the years has kind of resulted in us being one of those innovators in general, and again, if I talk about Dream 11, for example, one of our biggest problems always used to be concurrency and the number of users that come onto our platform. And, in that 30 minutes before a match starts, you get a huge spike of users coming in.
Right.
And probably we've been in business for 16 years now, and 14 out of those 16 years, day one of IPL, it was guaranteed that our platform would go down. Right, and we worked very hard on those problems, how to solve it, how to be ready for, the kind of scale. And over time, we've just learned and we've gotten better. We've been able to provide better experience to our users. So, at least from our side, that's what we've done. And then the other thing also, Rajesh, that you asked is how has, the ecosystem also supported us. So, for example, on the payment side, UPI has come in, and there's been huge adoption of UPI. There's been huge adoption of internet across, tier 3, tier 4 kind of towns as well. And that has helped us get that kind of scale, get that kind of user base. And then there's the government's initiative on Digital India. They've been pushing a lot on digital literacy and getting more and more people online. So these are, initiatives that we see has helped us. They have been headwinds for our industry, tailwinds for our industry. And that's helped us grow and acquire more users. So today, for example, 78% of our users come from outside the top 100 cities of India. And that's because these people have been enabled with smartphones, with internet, with the ability to pay using UPI mostly. Right. So that's helped us in a significant way to innovate and thrive the way the entire industry has been thriving right now.
Thank you, Bhavit. You bring up many interesting points. One is in terms of you mentioned about the advent of AI and how it has contributed to the game adoption. And also in terms of, one is ability to pay, and assuming the ability to pay is there, the other one is the avenues to pay. And you referred to in terms of how UPI has led to an explosion in this particular space. And while Bhavit had mentioned about AI, interestingly, the first commercial application of AI in the world was to play a game of checkers. And if you go and look at in terms of what kind of RAM that was used, it was 0.002 MB of RAM that was used to play that game of checkers. Now, we are talking about numbers which are exponentially higher than that particular RAM. So you can think about in terms of what kind of amplification that is possible through AI in the world of gaming. Going to you, Chirag, Bhavit mentioned about AI and the other tech drivers. Let's take the discussion to Gen AI because audience wants to hear more about Gen AI. So how do you think the cloud technologies and Gen AI are contributing to this?
Sure. So, I think Indian gaming industry has really done well so far in contributing to our digital economy. Largely driven through hyper-casual, casual, RNG-based games developed and published from India. But if the gaming industry has to continue this growth and contribution to that dream of trillion-dollar economy, I think apart from growing these games, the industry will have to include core, mid-core, and AAA quality games competing at global scale. Now that development ecosystem in India is little nascent, right? There is lack of established studios. trained or experienced professionals, and even supporting infrastructure, which is making it challenging. So cloud and cloud platform and technologies can easily bridge the gap of that infrastructure very quickly. At Google Cloud, we are focused on 3 strategic areas to help this development or help this developer ecosystem. One, serving player everywhere, right? By hosting game servers on world's best and world's largest and most secure network. Second, collect and organize game data. So to easily store critical game and player data at massive scale, as Bhavit mentioned, with that concurrency,
right.
and that too at extremely low latency. And lastly, to unlock game and player insights, so understanding what's working to find and retain players using Google Analytics and AI. If you really see the top 10 grossing game companies in the world, whether it is EA, Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard, Nintendo, they all are using Google Cloud in some form or the other in their gaming infrastructure. And we are bringing that experience to India. And that's where I am also most excited, because we are already working with few Indian developer studios and publishers who are trying to build this world-class console quality games for mobile audiences using these technologies. But that's not all. As you said, what's next? Because we'll have to go a step further with that trillion economy dream, right? So the next, we believe, and Samir spoke about it a little, is living games developed using the power of generative AI. So if you really see the games today, they are all live service games where the model itself is a cycle between developers and players. So depending on the player behavior, the developer drops new content, launches newer versions, packages, etc., etc. When you switch to these living games using generative AI, the model or the cycle expands to include the game itself, delivering some enriching experience and also new business outcomes. Now, this will sound a little grandiose, but I think that future is going to be sooner than most of us think here. And some of it is already happening. We are seeing it. If you see today, generative AI use in gaming can be classified in 2 broader areas, right? One is to improving productivity and efficiency during the game development. And second is to improve player experience during the gameplay. Now, Samir spoke about a few GenAI examples, etc., my colleague earlier in the morning, so I will not dwell too much into it. But when generative AI, if it's integrated in these games today and game development, it is going to transform these live service games into living games, right? And we are already seeing this happening. For example, generative AI today is used in development of games, like, for example, game assets, characters, props, audio, video, or even code generation and AI-based game testing. It will soon expand to delivering newer game experiences, for example, smart non-player characters, or dynamic in-game content, or gameplay personalized to players, so on and so forth. And when that becomes prevalent, I think that will bring the 10x growth in the industry.
Thank you, Chirag. So you bring up 2 interesting points. One is in terms of democratization of tech through the cloud technologies that Google offers, so that game development and game access becomes easy. And from a GenAI perspective, you're saying contextualization of game improves us quite a bit. Thanks for that. So Sudhir, going to you, I'm reminded while I was taking a stroll in our community, the proverbial dialogue, "Tumhare paas kya hai, mere paas maa hai" types, right? So 2 kids were engaged in this dialogue. One guy goes on saying, "Mere paas PSP2 hai, tere paas kya hai?" So in the devices divide and the digital divide is going to create a lot of differences. We did speak about in terms of tech, in terms of developing the games, but devices also play an important role from an access perspective. What's your take if we have to, go towards the trillion-dollar dream and grow the user base significantly? Your perspectives.
Thanks, Rajesh. I'll come back to that question in just a second, but since it's post-lunch and I think everybody needs a little dose of waking up, I'll start with a small thought experiment, right? We talk about a $1 trillion target that the Prime Minister has set for digital economy. I mean, India today is about maybe $3.5 trillion as GDP anyway. I have a question for the House. How big do you think the world's GDP is total? All over the world, total GDP. Just shout out guesses. I'll just say higher, lower to help you guys. Somebody said 50. No, you'll have to go higher. Louder, louder. 70 I heard. Nahin, thoda aur badhaiye. 120, 110 is the right answer. Who's the person there? Kudos to you, Mr. X. But $110 trillion is the global GDP today. Gaming out of that is, any guesses? It was there in one of the sessions earlier. So somebody said less than 1%. So the actual data is closer to 3 trillion eventually. So you are looking at, sorry, not 3 trillion, 300 billion, which is 0.3% roughly is the number. So it's less than 1% for sure, but 0.3%. Now in India, when we talk about our GDP, how much do you think gaming is? Is it 0.3%? Is it more or is it less? Easy answer. It's much less. In India, it is maybe 0.1%.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
India, yeah, just about. So for us as game or companies related to gaming, when we look at that, we say, you know, in India, gaming is still much smaller than what it needs to be just to catch up with the global average. And India is a much younger economy than the rest of the world. Therefore, gaming should actually be much higher, should not be much lower. So that's the basic logic with which all the gaming companies keep going and saying, you know, there is growth. We just need to figure out the right way to capture that growth. And now let me come to the question that you had asked.
Yeah.
See, devices is a big thing. And in India, the mobile phone is the device on which gaming happens. And globally, mobile gaming has been the engine of growth. And that's been what's driving the global gaming industry as well. So India is kind of at the right time, right place to experience that growth and help to accelerate it. I work for a company called Nazara. Nazara is India's only listed company in the gaming space. So we have a bunch of games which we've developed out of India which mainly target the US market or other markets. We also have some games which target the India market. Now, when we look at what is our mission, how can we help to get to that $1 trillion economy goal that we talked about for this panel? So we at Nazara think we can do two things. So one is bring the best Indian developers, young developers right out of college, few years experience, whatever they may be, or more experienced companies, and help to take their games, their products to the world. And in the last few years, we've done a bit, and we want to do a lot more. I mean, you have seen press where we've been investing in companies like this. This is a theme which is playing out quite nicely, and we want to keep doing more of this. But the second thing is also working with global game developers and helping them expand their game in India. Because when you launch an international game in India, it can't be just one English-based, large-size game which you think will work for all. It has to be localized. It has to have tie-ups with maybe it's influencers, maybe it's marketers, whatever it is, across different subsegments. And how do you actually make that work? That's what we think we can do. So that's what I would say, Rajesh.
Thank you, Sudhir. Glad that you bring that point in terms of contrary to the belief that devices become a barrier. But in India's case, mobile becomes the most preferred device to play the games. And that shouldn't be a barrier, whether it is a tier 1 or a tier 2 or a tier 3 town. Tier 3 town, right? Thank you. Thanks for that. Saurabh, anything else you would like to add?
I'll just add on to what Sudhir has just said. I'm going to talk more about humans of India and how that will become the chief driver of this mission of our Honorable Prime Minister's vision of building a 1 trillion digital economy. See, a lot of things have changed over the past, not a decade, rather 2 decades. How Indian entrepreneurs are thinking has evolved, seriously evolved. From India really booming back in the 90s from pure play service-based industry, which were really catering and manufacturing technology for all the innovation which was happening somewhere else, not in India. So that has changed. We have the privilege of sitting with Bhavit today, right? Dream 11, for example, has done something which is unprecedented. You don't really see fantasy leagues, where you can invest 50 rupees and, hope to win crores in prize pool. This is unprecedented. This was thought and innovated and designed and built in India for India. There was a time when, Indian entrepreneurs were largely, doing things which were a reflection of what has worked in the West, or at least countries which are advanced in terms of technology. That is changing. Today, this whole ecosystem of innovation, right, is driving that. How do how companies like Nazara invest in those innovative ecosystems, channelize that capital in the right direction, is, in my opinion, is going to be the chief driver.
Right.
Chief driver to that goal.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So we spoke about opportunities and various things that are there in the gaming industry. And there could be impediments, there could be opportunities for improvement, not just opportunities, but opportunities for improvement as well. So Chirag, starting with you, what do you see those opportunities for improvement from a tech point of view? Do you see, are there any tech challenges which are there, and how can one go about solving them?
Sure. I spoke about, like cloud has already democratized the infrastructure, right? And
right.
Coupled with the commercial models of pay-as-you-go and so on and so forth, they've already solved for the cold start problem for developing for the high-end games. From a gamer perspective, I think the single biggest indicator of experience is latency. Right, just to re-emphasize that, the games are becoming bigger. The 4G, 5G experience with different sets of players across cities is very inconsistent, right? So the perceived latency, irrespective of what the network providers or the game publishers see, has become very critical, right? Now, obviously, Google has done some industry-leading work to optimize and improve this end-user experience with respect to latency. And all of us have experienced that in the form of our live services like YouTube, search, pay, maps, so on and so forth, right? And at cloud, what we have done is we have productionized that same capability to deliver low latency experiences for gaming companies and game development companies to use. Also, we are very bullish of delivering game experiences at the edge. So we are working with some of the bigger industry players to bring those capabilities to our gaming partners. Now let's also talk about some of the pain points in adoption of generative AI for gaming, right? And I'll talk about that in 3 levels. So for example, at the platform level, right, the cost and latency becomes very important. Generative AI to be financially feasible to be used in popular games, which has large number of users, the generative AI inference cost has to be very, very efficient. Additionally, for smooth gameplay and seamless player experience, low latency is very, very important. Right? So both cost and latency becomes important. Like delivering a poor gameplay with a lot of lag will seriously hurt the success of the game. And then on top of it, the raw performance of the game with generative AI, along with the ability for game developers to use state-of-the-art models without any vendor locking, has become very critical now. The next level of pain points come with the maturity of AI models itself. Like, so Gen AI in gaming, the results or the inference has to be very coherent, relevant, and contextually appropriate again and again, each time a game is played. The AI model should not propagate any biases or stereotypes. Right? So, and additionally, we will need some content moderation to align with the maturity rating of the game so that we can deliver a much seamless, safe, and inclusive experience to the end user. And then lastly, at the engaging gameplay level, there will be games who would want content which the current large language models filter out today, right? Because of several reasons. Okay. So that needs to be solved for as well, because that's also an impediment to adopting Gen AI in games. And also we need to balance, when I talk about the newer experiences of user-generated content, a fine balance need to be brought in between the user-generated content in games as well as the game original structure itself, like the lore or the storyline itself, right? So those are some of the impediments, right? And we are already working towards it. We are collaborating with the industry. Just for example, to solve the latency problem, we have launched our generative AI models which can be directly deployed on device, on mobile phone, to reduce the latency directly. From a cost perspective, we are working with our gaming partners with newer frameworks which brings down the generative inference cost drastically down. In fact, we've also slashed the prices of our frontier models by 50 to 80% in the last month itself. Also, we are collaborating with the industry on responsible AI, where Google Cloud's responsible AI framework aims to ensure that AI is developed and used in a way that is very ethical, fair, and in general beneficial to the society. So I hope these effort will, fructify and, resolve all these impediments.
So seamless streaming and trust in AI is what you would say. Coming to you, Sudhir, in terms of there could also be some inhibitions from a trust and safety perspective in the gaming environments. How do they contribute in terms of for an adoption of a game or to serve as a barrier for a game? Your perspective on that?
No, I think trust and safety is clearly a very important area for many kinds of industries which touch customers, and specifically in the case of gaming, that's a big factor. I don't know if some of you followed the news maybe 3 or 4 days back. There was this report that Hindenburg, same guys who had the reports on Adani, had also released a report on Roblox globally.
Right.
And that got a lot of press, especially in the US. I think in India it was kind of not focused on that much. But it did focus upon safety aspects as well, of how unmoderated access to games could have an issue in certain kinds of games. I think globally, of course, games have put in place mechanisms to deal with these kinds of issues, and regulators have also made sure that they do so. And I think the good news is, I think globally that has now been an area which has seen a good bit of thinking and regulation. And I think India is also well on track for that. I think specifically on the India context, I think there is, one is obviously, as we would have seen in the press, there's been news around GST changes and retrospective GST in particular, which is one aspect which affects especially the real money gaming industry in India. And that is something that I think the industry has been seeking a bit more clarity on, and the government has kind of been indicating that there will be clarity on this, and we look forward to having that. I think the positive thing that happened in the last year on similar fronts is that there is now more clarity around who is the regulator for the industry, at least what is the prospective going forward GST rate, and some other aspects around regulation which are clearer. I think there are some things which are still not clear around state versus central rights on games, etc. But from an industry point of view, I think we collectively need to make sure that we set in place guidelines for customer safety, as well as ensuring financial transparency and security around that, which I think mostly, at least the responsible companies in India have now more or less got. So I'd say we're on the right track for that. And that's one part of a basic building block for getting the gaming industry to grow much more than where we are today.
So you're saying not only trust in the game, but also trust in the regulatory framework and trust in the environment that kind of supervises the gaming industry. That's more important. Saurabh, from your perspective, in terms of, are there any other inhibiting factors that are there for us to accomplish the lofty goal of $1 trillion economy?
Yeah, I think practically I'll be extending on Sudhir's point. Regulations, right? There is positive movements in regulations. We've, as real money gaming, we've been climbing the mountain of 28% GST and navigating, together. However, it does at least give us clarity that we are recognized. We are not, I remember, this reminds me of a conversation with my father. It's a short anecdote. This is probably late 2016, 2017, and we were about to start SportsBaazi as a business. I was explaining my father, this is what I really want to do. I was working in a startup in Gurgaon at that point as a business developer, and I wanted to start up myself. And I was like, this is what I want to do. What is this? He asked. Like, this is fantasy sports. You make teams, draft people in a team, then join leagues, put money, and you win money. And his response was like, "Ye legal hai kya?" And it took me hours, to explain to him that what this is and how the Indian law works, how it differentiates between games that have predominance of skill versus other games. We have come far from 2017 to now with much more clarity. We don't get asked that question anymore.
Right.
Right. At least not from my father.
The retrospective thing is still there.
Yeah. So that's taxation, right? I'm talking about still good things that have happened in regulation. Yeah. Retrospective is absolutely still there. It's a thorn, and we are very optimistic. We sense that there is an understanding between the hierarchies of government that we'll have to find ways of navigating away from it to ensure that the sun rising sector continues to rise, and positive clarity on various other aspects of regulation. A regulation which is grounded on logic, rather than pure play perception, so on and so forth, is very, very important for a very thriving gaming ecosystem, whether real money or not real money for that matter. How do we ensure that these innovation rooms, Chirag talked about AAA games, being one of the pillars of this growth. It will be really, really important that we are able to, define innovation and drive innovation pods to achieve that.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you. Bhavit, from your perspective, your game has a lot of adoption in the tier 3, tier 4 towns, a fact that you alluded to before. And given that kind of a background, and if you have to look at in terms of what kind of support is required for further adoption of real money games, especially the skill-based games, what will be your take? One, of course, we did cover some of the aspects on policy, some of the aspects on regulation, but equally important aspect is also to develop the ecosystem in those tier 2 and tier 3 towns, and startups play an important role as part of that ecosystem. What are your perspectives with regards to that?
Sure. So before I talk about that, I think one of the thing, and the reason I think all of us are here are that we are a super optimistic bunch of people, right? So, when we started off fantasy sports 16 years ago, no one ever believed, and any of the gurus that we asked, internet gurus at that time, that whether we should do something like that, everyone said, don't even attempt, it's a terrible idea. So we went ahead, we are like, we have conviction, we want to try it out. So we all a super optimistic bunch of people. We are today at 0.1% of the economy. The global average says 0.3%. There's no reason why we can't get to 1% or even more. So, but it's up to us. It's up to us to be optimistic. It's up to us to challenge and say that people are saying this will not work. How do we make it work? What is there that people can't see that we can see? And what is the conviction that we have to actually grow and, contribute significantly to that $1 trillion economy dream that we have? And, from gaming, then there'll be other industries also. I think in general, entrepreneurs, startups, all are optimistic bunch of people. So we need to have that thought of, breaking the mold and seeing how we can do much more than what everyone else can see. And then that's when we get to that goal, right? And so by the way, to pick up on Sudhir's point also, we've had people who've been working for us saying that, we can't get married because when we tell people that we are working in real money gaming, a lot of people are questioning whether that's the right choice of career. Today, people saying that I met my spouse and we bonded over fantasy sports. So it's been a drastic shift in mindset, right? Yeah. And so it's just about, keeping at it, having that vision, getting to a point where you believe that you will be able to make a difference. And, the same thing with, when we started building Dream 11 and overall Dream Sports, we never thought that we would be able to reach into the Bharat hinterland, the tier 3, tier 4. You're like, even if we get to tier 1, tier 2, it'll be a big win for us. But, we kept at it. Okay, we got, our lead adopters from tier 1, tier 2. Didn't mean that we stopped out there saying that, okay, we've kind of completed and we've hit a TAM wall. So, there's no more users that we can get from this country. We kept on pushing. We are like, okay, what's the new audience that we can get? How can we tap into a different audience? And as I said earlier, obviously, things like, internet penetration, like UPI has helped us tremendously. But you have to be there at the right place at the right time with the right conviction to be able to penetrate into those kind of audiences. And for us, it was very simple, just keep the platform simple. Keep it easy to use. People should be able to understand what they're doing on the platform when they come there. And it should be easy to explain to your friend. It should be like you should be able to tell in one line to your friend what is the value proposition of using this platform. So a bunch of these things has kind of contributed to the growth in tier 3, tier 4. I think you all also spoke about it in the PwC report that, once we get to that stage, it's about how do we contribute outside of our core, right? So, for example, at Dream Sports, apart from fantasy sports, today we do sports content, merchandise, sports travel and experiences. We've built a AAA quality game that Chirag spoke about earlier, Dream Cricket, which is demoing at the booth outside. So there are a bunch of these things and these different areas that we've invested in. So it's not about, okay, this is your core business and, if all of us get our core business right, we'll be able to contribute to the $1 trillion economy, target. Obviously, that is the key. That is what will drive it. But how do we invest in other places? And I think Nazara has done a great job today in investing in multiple different gaming genres and across different platforms as well. So, it's about getting the core business right and then developing your ancillary, which will together grow the entire gaming ecosystem going forward. So, yeah, it's all about, having conviction, building out the core, and then seeing what else you can do once you've built out the core.
Thank you, Bhavit. While you were speaking, it kind of flashed to me. There's also a change in the social narrative, I think. At least when I grew up, my parents used to say, play less and study more so that you will prosper. Now here is an opportunity to play more and also prosper. It kind of rewrites the equation, right? Now you can say you can play and make money for that play as well. So thank you for that. And I had a little bit of a game experience.
If I can just add a bit on that point. When we talk about how do we take Indian games to the world and actually make, therefore, the whole economy grow from this. Over the last few years, what we've seen, a couple of things around that, right? So one, we have a game in the Nazara family, which is entirely developed in Mumbai, and entire team sits out of here. And they're the US #1 leader in a certain segment, which is 2 to 6-year-old kids. There's a game for that. And it's the #1 in that segment. It's grown. It's really understood the market there and been able to grow that. I think part of this, and to replicate that across many, many different games, which hopefully will come out of India and do that in other segments. One is you need a little bit of just the ecosystem maturing. Like this particular game was in the right place at the right time, but many times we may have entrepreneurs who came up with ideas, but they didn't get that right, whether it's that funding environment, whether it is just access to talent. In this particular case, it was a simpler game, so locally available talent could work very nicely.
Right.
But in some cases, you genuinely need a globally aware team and maybe members from different parts who can collaborate. So how do you ensure that happens? You can't create it. How do you ensure that happens? It's something that the government and the industry are all working on. But I think that's the direction in which we're going. Just understanding user experience, understanding the customer, what do they need in other parts of the world, and being able to build for that at a certain scale, I think is the challenge.
So global mindset and local execution.
And funding. Expertise, teams, HR, whatever you call it.
Absolutely.
And Nazara has done a great job as showing us that, there is access to capital outside of just private equity and VCs. So,
and private equity and VC, frankly, doesn't do too much in this space because for them, they are looking for a 10x, 100x jump, typically on an investment, which gaming, it may not give unless you really have one of those Angry Birds kind of blockbuster games.
Sure.
But there is a wide set of games which will be very profitable, can grow, but may not deliver VC returns. You need to figure out a different funding model for them.
Thank you. I agreed with my panelists that there will not be any out-of-syllabus question, but I'm going to ask them one out-of-syllabus question. If there is one thing that describes you and the people in the audience doesn't know about it, what is that? Bhavit, Saurabh, Sudhir, and Chirag. I'm asking this with a specific intent. I'll explain the intent later.
So I would rather be at office working than being here talking about gaming or whatever. So I prefer in general, just being in office with my people and, getting the work done.
So talk only about office topics to him, not about, or maybe gaming in office topic will be a icebreaker with you. Thank you. How about you, sir?
I'm going to touch a office topic again. Sorry for that. I think it'll be obvious. I've talked a lot about innovation today. It's in a very core DNA. You know, I like to innovate. It's part of my character. Whenever we sit down, work with the team, we're always trying to do new things, right, which are not seen around. How do we achieve that? You'll see reflection on the SportsBaazi product of the same as well, right? That you would see it's a little different. It's ahead of its time, designed for the gamer of the future, right? So yeah, innovation.
Innovation and think out of box would be a conversation starter for you. Okay?
I'll give a completely different answer, which is, I think even now, I mean, I work in an online gaming company, I do all kinds of games, but I really, if you give me a choice, I would play a board game over an online game any day, even now.
Board game, online game.
Not true to the business for sure.
This is definitely out of syllabus, but there's no one word that can describe me. As an individual, I would say stay calm and keep moving forward, right?
Wonderful. So I gave you reasons to connect with them. So now you know what is the reason to connect with them so that you have a right conversation and not a wrong conversation. Thank you, and the times is up.